Greg, unmute yourself, my friend.
How are you guys doing today?
Great to see you again.
Good to see
I'm
you.
doing phenomenal. And you?
I'm doing well.
So you and I talked. I remember when I saw you at an event that you came to, and I'm like, I know this guy. I talked to him 10 years ago. And I actually have this old cryptic paper file because I'm a paper pig. And during the event, and I go, I know I talked to him. And
I still have the emails, Mike.
do you? And I pulled out my notes of like, kind of what your limiting beliefs, what your aspirations were. It was 2011. I don't remember the month. And then, I know you stayed in touch, you attended some of our events, but you kind of just became a client a few months ago. And I just want to talk about kind of, when you enrolled, kind of what your situation and some of the shifts, so people can start to see how to apply some of this mindset work and some of the things to transition the way they think.
Yeah. So when I have followed Mike, and I've been in the monthly program with when you used to send the CDs out. I got the CDs. So I've learned a lot over the years from the training that you've offered. But getting into the whole program, and I think you and I both talked about this before, that I don't believe the mindset stuff that you've added to the program was there.
No, it wasn't.
And I always use the example of why did I build my own website, which I never should have done, by the way, never should have done that. But when I started my business in 2010, I didn't know what I wanted on that website. And so that's the same thing with this mindset stuff. You kept telling me the tools, and it's like, well, yeah, but I know most of that. I've been a recruiter for 20 years. What's missing? What's missing? And when you guys came up with the program this fall with Francis and the mindset stuff, it's like, yeah, that's exactly what I've said that's missing. 90% of where my gap between my goals and my execution is, I know in my head. I know there's plenty of business out there. And so that's what we've been working on with Francis and Pam over the last few months.
So, kind of what was, from a standpoint of where you wanted to take your business, what was your situation, and talk a little bit as to kind of what the gap was and how you filled that.
Yeah. So if you go look back at the searches that I, had been successful at getting, and I'd actually even shifted to doing more retainer work, is that 80 to 90% of the business that I was getting over the last 5 years, I could still trace back to the 15 years I'd spent in a national staffing firm. So I wasn't like building new business. I was just still getting residual of being in business. So when I would get done with a search, I got done with a nice retained controller search and was having a very good revenue year so far coming into the fall. I still had that sinking feeling. I'm sure people can relate with this. Where's my next search coming from? We're as good as the last month. So that's where I was at when the program came up, and it's kind of like, okay, I can invest in this. I mean, I need to invest in this. I need to get some structure to it. And kind of coincidentally, I have an accountability group, some friends that we've been talking for a year that we'd pulled together. One of the people was tracking her metrics, which I believe was from your program, how she tracked her metrics. I think she had done your program, Mike. And we both had the same system, Crelate. So before I even got into the mindset seminar that we did in, I think it was late August, I had already set up my metrics that way, but I wasn't tracking them. I was realistically not tracking anything. And so I knew that was the path I needed to go to. And so it was just, timing was right.
And kind of talk about the shift in results.
So if you want to just go tangible, we did a 30-day sprint out of the program, and it just got me back on the phone. And I had a decent database of contacts and phone numbers and people I was connected to. And so I just basically went for low-hanging fruit to get to hit my metrics numbers. And during that time, I actually grabbed a guy I'd contacted with a few times over the last 3 or 4 years. Nothing, that wasn't a tight relationship or anything. Actually, I was mixing him up with somebody else. And he was a CFO who had just taken over just over a year at a company, and he was needing to hire a corporate controller. And I went through how I do that. And he said, yeah, we need to talk. We just need to do this. And it ended up becoming a retained search. So that was a tangible one. I also ended up getting an old client that came back who had been pretty much on hiatus because their business was dramatically affected by COVID. And through that process, they'd had people leave them, and they'd, had some restructuring and stuff. And I ended up with, and this was my best client before COVID over the course of many years. And I ended up with 4 retained searches from them. And so that wasn't necessarily directly related to the program, but the program itself, I think, gave me some confidence that I could get through basically a gauntlet of business I'd never been able to handle. And a quick observation from that too was, during this whole time that I was going through it and went into more recruiting mode than business development mode, I saw where my marketing numbers went, and they were soft. So I knew what was probably coming in January, February was, okay, now I did enough placements in that time frame plus an additional placement that I'm way ahead of the curve for the short term, but I also knew that I still had not addressed some of the issues that I came into the program to address. And so we're working on those now, Pam and I and Francis.
Francis, if you want to jump in, because I know you did some of that, the work on switching, helping him change beliefs.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here, Greg. I've so enjoyed coaching you. So many of the things that we've already talked about in this challenge, I think, apply to especially the early calls that we were doing one-on-one. And I'd love to just hit on those highlights there, especially around, if you don't mind sharing with everyone, your set points. You had some financial set points that when you got to that deeper root of, yeah, like we've always had what we need. And so I would work just enough to cover, and then I'd take my foot off the gas pedal essentially. And how you shifted that pattern, that was one. And then 2, since you've been doing this, expanding your capacity, right? How you went from believing about yourself, I can only do 1 search at a time, to 5, it was 5 at a time, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
and
I was,
how that, like your flow energy returned, like how it became more fun.
well, yeah, and it kind of reminded me of things, and this goes all the way back to, as I tell people, I'm a CPA, I did my penance in accounting for 5 years. You know, my favorite time as an accountant, as crazy as it sounds, was month-end close. I loved being busy, and I do love being busy. But being busy just for being busy, and that's, I'm sure I've been guilty of that many a times. There is more structure to it. And, you know, I went through this gauntlet of orders, knowing now that I can execute at that level, but there still needs to be a balance. And since then, from a challenge from Pam and obviously getting over that limiting belief, I've actually hired a VA now to go ahead, you know, even though I don't necessarily have that kind of backflow or orders, they're doing some evergreen projects that I just never got to, you know, whether it's just finding phone numbers. I don't want to get off track, but I did want to mention, Mike, that sprint thing that you talked about the other day that we did for the hour. Yep. I think my numbers were 35 and 7.
Right.
For that the other day. And it was like a wake up call. It's like, oh, I pulled my list together kind of in a half-assed way and realized I don't have that good of phone numbers. I don't have that good of data. Okay, let me just outsource somebody else to go get that for me. And that's what I'm working on. So things like that.
And how much did your revenue grow since we started working together?
I mean, my revenue ended up for the year. Well, since we worked together, I mean, it went 4-fold. I mean, it was, you know, and here's the deal is that some of that would have come anyway because of that client. Some of it would have, but I can tell you exactly where I would have been today. I'd have been where I was back in August going, where's my next search coming from? You know, I don't necessarily know where it's coming from right now, but I know that if I hit my metrics number, and even if it's slow to come because I was a little bit soft in December, I know that eventually it will come. And that's where the mindset and the belief is different than it was. And just being a little bit more proactive from that perspective and not letting myself, I'm a classic vacationer at the desk.
That's one of the things we talk about is it's a horrible resort.
Yeah, it's a horrible
one's desk. I vacation there. I think we've all vacationed there.
Yeah.
And the term is basically, especially like somebody like Greg, or I think a lot of us, when we have a burst of success and maybe have some, you know, you got a few invoices out there, we all kind of like go, right? And then, you know, we vacation at our desk instead of just saying, you know what, I just had a really good month. I'm going to take a long weekend or a weekend. I'm going to go away and clear my head. We then actually let our habits diminish it's harder to restart when you vacation at your desk than restarting when you come back from a week in the Caribbean, for example. Reward yourself, give yourself free time. We talked a lot about that yesterday. But as Greg talked about, we're going to talk about this on Thursday, there's an exact, specific, precise formula for Greg's desk on how many people he has to talk to get a search that he'll work on. And it's not mean he doesn't find an opening, a search that he'll work on. And each person's is a little bit different. And what I'm not going to steal the thunder from Thursday, but we'll go into that. Anything else you want to add, Greg, about anything we didn't cover?
Yeah, just real quick, I would say that one of the other areas that, and I don't want to, spoiler from a good tip from Frances, but honestly, one of the books that she recommended, The Big Leap, was just almost life-changing for me from the standpoint of, the basic concept that we do put set points in there in our lives, and I'm not worthy of getting to that next level, or when I have this much success, there's always going to be regression to the mean. Well, that is a limiting belief right there in and of itself. And the question becomes, what needs to be true? Am I using the right language?
Yes, you are.
What needs to be true to not make that a fact, to make sure that I can hit this number? Because guys, I hit my goal number for 2022. I ended up hitting it in 2021, but I also realized that a lot of it came from one client, and I had not put this system into place until the start of September, or started to put this into place. So what's the possibility that if I actually execute on this for the whole year, and it started getting my mind going, okay, is my number too low? Is my number too low now? So those are the kinds of things that I never would have been at. I was never at before August or before September.
That's awesome. Frances, anything else you want to ask?
Yeah, just thank you so much. And you kept saying confidence. It's confidence in your future. And that comes internally from the mindset, externally from the strategy. And it's just been a real honor and privilege to coach you. And that's what mindset work is about. It's not magical thinking. It's really about everything that Greg said. He got aware of his set points. He started to see how on autopilot he would take the foot off the gas and limit his capability, beliefs in his capability. And as he shifted that, then shifted strategy and process, that's what we call in the program a quantum leap. It's not magical thinking, but it's saying, okay, here's this goal, here's the gap, here's where I want to be, what needs to be true in order to achieve that in less time, less effort. That's a quantum leap where you can get up into that ideal or just move in that direction and feel the energy of moving in that direction because you're noticing it and you have faith that you can create more and more of it. So really, Greg, thank you so much. It's been really exciting.
Sure.
Thanks for sharing. I know that was very helpful to a lot of people.
Yes, The Big Leap, Gay Hendricks, Renee.
Yes.
Phenomenal book. Probably, what is, I don't know, $10.95, maybe $14.95. Yeah. Might have to go crazy. But Greg, thanks so much. You're welcome to hang out through the Q&A. I respect your time, but I don't want you to think, if you want to refresh your course, if you want to hang out, we're thrilled to have you here. I really appreciate you investing your time and sharing. I always like the reason we put these in the course of this week is a lot of people think, well, if I've listened to Mike and Frances all week, it sounds good, but here's how it really applied to real human beings recently, the kind of shifts that are possible.